Maurice. Whoops. Maurice by E.M. Forster. Now, now what's interesting, I'm not talking about the novel Maurice here by E.M. Forster. We're talking about a little point in the afterword, the terminal note. It's about the human energy field. It's about a visit between E.M. Forster and Edward Carpenter and his boyfriend, whatever his boyfriend's name was. Let's just read it. Terminal note. In its original form, which it still almost retains, Maurice dates from 1913. It was the direct result of a visit to Edward Carpenter at Milthorpe. Carpenter had a prestige which cannot be understood today. He was a rebel appropriate to his age. He was sentimental and a little sacramental, for he had begun life as a clergyman. He was a socialist who ignored industrialism, and a simple lifer with an independent income, and a Whitmanic poet whose nobility exceeded his strength. And, finally, he was a believer in the love of comrades, whom he sometimes called Uranians. It was this last aspect of him that attracted me in my loneliness. For a short time he seemed to hold the key to every trouble. I approached him through Lowes Dickinson, and as one approaches a saviour. It must have been on my second or third visit to the shrine that the spark was kindled, and he and his comrade George Merrill combined to make a profound impression on me and to touch a creative spring. George Merrill also touched my backside, gently and just above the buttocks. I believe he touched most people, so it wasn't Edward Carpenter, it was George Merrill, Edward Carpenter's friend, or boyfriend. George Merrill also touched my backside, gently and just above the buttocks. I believe he touched most people's. The sensation was unusual, and I still remember it, as I remember the position of a long, vanished tooth. It was as much psychological as physical. It seemed to go straight through the small of my back into my ideas, without involving my thoughts. If it really did this, it would have acted in strict accordance with Carpenter's yogified mysticism, and would prove that at that moment I had conceived. He then goes on to talk about his creativity after that experience. I then returned to Harrogate, where my mother was taking a cure, and immediately began to write Maurice. No other of my books has started off in this way. Then he goes on about his excellent creativity after having this experience where this man, George Merrill, touched him just above the buttocks. Well, I wish I'd been there, because I would have had my gauss meter there. I think someone knew about yogic currents. Now, of course, Hinduism and Buddhism talk about the yogic currents, don't they? And indeed, in Buddhist and Hindu art, you'll see the energy field depicted on, for example, in Buddhism, the energy field, we have the halo and the energy field as well, and it's depicted in Buddhist art, and also in Buddhist statuary. You'll find the energy field is often combined with the folds in the Buddha's clothing. If you see a lot of Buddhist statues, it's not just the folds in the clothing. The energy field has been incorporated into the folds of the clothing very beautifully, and it's sort of subliminal. Yes, I wish I'd had my gauss meter with Mr. George Merrill. Yes, because I would have tested him for how many, yes, how much energy he was giving off. Now, Norman Vincent Peale was praying with a man, and he put his hand on the man's head. This is in one of his books, probably The Power of Positive Thinking. He and this man in a desperate situation, the man was in a desperate situation, and they prayed together, and Norman Vincent Peale put his hand on the man's head, and he felt energy coming out of his hand and into the man's head, and the man could feel it too. So something was going on there. And yes, I don't know if Jesus was a soul, a myth, or a real person, but it sounds like he knew about the energy. Here's a little bit off the internet about the woman that was hemorrhaging, apparently. She, with trembling fingertips, at last she was able to touch the bottom of the hem. Immediately she felt in her body that she was healed. "Who touched me?" Jesus called out. "What do you mean, who touched you?" replied Jesus' followers. "There are people everywhere jostling and pushing against you. Many people are touching you." "No, someone touched me with a hand of faith, for I felt power going from my body into another. I wish I'd had my gauss meter, yes, I wish I'd been there. Someone was giving off energy, yes. I wish I'd been there. Jesus must have probably been a bodhisattva, mustn't he?" Was there anything else I wanted to say about this? Yes, well, there's you can read all about the internet on prana energy and stuff like that. But yes, some people give off energy. They do. See ya.